This is what happens when the world's largest supply chain snaps in half. In this simulation, China stops all exports to the United States in a single moment. No electronics, no pharmaceuticals, no clothing, no rare earth metals. Nothing crosses the Pacific. What you're about to see isn't speculation. It's a simulation built from historical embargoes, just-in-time inventory data, and infrastructure dependencies most people never see. And somewhere in the middle of this timeline, there's a moment when the shock stops being about products and starts being about something far deeper. The first systems to collapse aren't the ones you'd expect. Every detail matters, because this simulation shows what 18% of all American goods disappearing overnight actually means. Hour 1, 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The announcement comes through diplomatic channels first, then spreads to intelligence agencies, then to a small group of corporate executives who receive calls in the middle of the night. Most Americans are asleep. The ports are quiet. Container ships in the Pacific continue moving, unaware their cargo will never unload. In boardrooms across 12 time zones, analysts pull up dependency charts, trying to map what this actually means. The data looks manageable at first. Inventory levels seem stable. Warehouses still hold weeks of product. But someone in a logistics center in Memphis notices something odd. The replenishment orders scheduled for today, the automatic restocking that happens every morning at 4 a.m., those orders were supposed to come from Shenzhen. They won't arrive in 6 weeks as planned. They won't arrive at all. By hour 3, the sun rises over the East Coast, and the first algorithmic trading systems detect the news. Stock futures drop 4% in 90 seconds. Circuit breakers halt trading twice before 9 a.m. Financial analysts appear on morning shows, and they all say some version of the same thing, that supply chains have redundancy, that markets will adjust, that this is temporary volatility. None of them mention the 42,000 products that have no domestic alternative. The phrase strategic reserves gets used 17 times in the first hour of trading. No one defines what that actually means for a country that imports 78% of its antibiotics from a single source. Hour 6, noon in New York. The pharmaceutical sector moves first. Hospital procurement officers make calls to distributors, asking about stock levels for critical medications, amoxicillin, ibuprofen, blood pressure medications, chemotherapy drugs. The distributors check their systems. Current inventory looks stable, about 19 days for most compounds. But the next shipment, the one scheduled to leave Shanghai last night, it's not coming. A quiet recalculation begins. Hospitals don't panic, they ration. Elective surgeries get postponed. Prescription refills get limited to 2-week supplies instead of 90 days. Patients calling pharmacies hear a new phrase. We can fill this prescription, but we're asking everyone to only request what they need for the next couple of weeks. Most people accept this. It sounds reasonable. But something else is starting beneath the surface. By hour 12, the electronics sector realizes the depth of the problem. Apple, Dell, HP, and dozens of smaller manufacturers discover that their just-in-time model, the system designed to eliminate waste and reduce costs, has become a countdown timer. Current inventory of smartphones in U.S. warehouses is about 11 days. Laptop components, maybe 16. But it's not just finished products. The semiconductor fabrication plants in Arizona and Texas, the ones built specifically to reduce dependence on foreign chips, they still need specialized chemicals and rare earth elements that only come from Chinese refineries. Gallium, germanium, neodymium. There are no substitutes. There are no reserves. A semiconductor executive in Silicon Valley opens a spreadsheet showing production schedules and realizes that in 43 days, the factory stops. Not because of demand, because the inputs vanish. Hour 18, midnight. Most of the country is asleep again, but the logistics networks never stop. Walmart's central inventory system, the algorithm that manages 4,700 stores and predicts restocking needs 3 weeks in advance, starts generating error codes. Thousands of SKUs show red warnings. The system is designed to automatically reorder products when stock falls below threshold levels. But now the reorder requests bounce back. No supplier, no estimated delivery. An analyst in Bentonville, Arkansas, looks at the error log and sees a pattern. Clothing, small appliances, consumer electronics, toys, automotive parts, hardware tools. The red warnings aren't random. They follow a single variable, country of origin. Every product manufactured in China now has a countdown. Some categories have 40 days, others have 9. Hour 24, day 2 begins, and the stock market opens down 11%. This is the largest single-day drop since 2020, but the financial mechanisms are still functioning. Currency markets react. The dollar strengthens initially as investors flee to safety, then weakens. As analysts realize the U.S. economy is about to lose access to $427 billion in annual imports. The Federal Reserve holds an emergency meeting. They discuss interest rates, liquidity injections, stabilization measures. But monetary policy can't manufacture antibiotics. It can't create lithium batteries. One economist in the meeting says something that doesn't make it into the press release. We're not facing an economic problem, we're facing a physics problem. You can't buy what doesn't exist. By hour 36, the consumer behavior starts shifting. It begins quietly. A few people buy extra phone chargers. Someone stocks up on batteries. A parent buys 2 winter coats for their child instead of 1, just in case. But the videos are already spreading on social media. Someone films an empty shelf where space heaters used to be. Another video shows a Best Buy with a sign limiting laptop purchases to 1 per customer. The videos aren't alarmist. They're just documentation. But they carry a subtext. Get yours now. Within 6 hours, that subtext becomes action. Target stores across the Midwest report unusual purchasing patterns. Electronic sections clear out in 70 minutes. The rush isn't panicked, it's methodical. People aren't hoarding, they're accelerating purchases they were planning to make eventually. A laptop they'd buy next year, they buy today. The effect is the same. Inventory that was supposed to last 3 weeks lasts 5 days. Hour 48. This is the moment economists don't talk about in public. The secondary cascade begins. It's not about Chinese products anymore, it's about American products that require Chinese components. An automotive plant in Michigan discovers that the wiring harnesses for their vehicles, assembled in Tennessee using copper wire from Chile and connectors from Vietnam, still need a specialized plastic housing that only one factory in Guangdong produces. The plant has 8 days of housings in stock. After that, the assembly line stops. Not because of Chinese cars, because American cars need Chinese parts embedded 3 layers deep in the supply chain. Across the industrial Midwest, procurement officers trace their component sources back, following the chain to its origin, and they keep finding the same endpoint: Shenzhen, Chongqing, Dongguan. By hour 60, the medical system starts making harder choices. The 19-day supply of antibiotics is now a 16-day supply because usage increased. Not because of new illnesses, but because doctors are prescribing them earlier, defensively, knowing the shortage is coming. The feedback loop is invisible but accelerating. Hospitals in rural areas, the ones farther from distribution hubs, start transferring critical patients to larger facilities that have deeper stock. A hospital administrator in Montana sends an email to the state health department asking about emergency protocols for drug shortages. The response takes 4 hours, and when it arrives, it's careful and bureaucratic. We are monitoring the situation and coordinating with federal agencies. There are no specifics. There's no stockpile coming. Hour 72, day 3. The Port of Los Angeles, normally processing 9,000 containers per day, is operating at 34% capacity. The ships from China stopped departing 3 days ago, and the backfill from other routes hasn't materialized. Longshoremen stand near empty berths, watching the water. Some of them have worked these docks for 20 years, and they've seen slowdowns, strikes, recessions. This feels different. One of them describes it later in an interview. It wasn't loud. That's what I remember. Ports are always loud, metal on metal, engines, voices. But that morning it was quiet, just wind and water. The economic data won't reflect this for weeks, but the physical reality is already visible. The flow has stopped. By hour 84, the retail sector begins active triage. Major chains implement purchase limits on categories flagged as China dependent. Electronics, 2 items per customer. Small appliances, 1 per household. The limits aren't legally enforceable, just policy, but most people comply. The psychology is shifting. Scarcity is no longer theoretical. A Best Buy in Ohio sells out of its entire laptop inventory in one afternoon. Not because of panic, but because the limits themselves signal value. If they're limiting purchases, the product must be scarce. If it's scarce, buy it now. The algorithm is simple and it spreads without coordination. Hour 96, 4 days in. The pharmaceutical distribution networks start showing stress fractures. A pharmacy chain in the southeast receives its weekly shipment from the regional distributor, but the order is 61% complete. The missing items aren't exotic, they're common. Generic blood pressure medication, antacids, anti-inflammatory drugs. The pharmacist calls the distributor asking when the rest will arrive. The distributor checks their system and gives an answer that's technically true but functionally useless. We'll ship it when we receive it. There's no date. The pharmacist starts calling patients who have standing refills, asking them to switch to alternative medications, different compounds that treat the same conditions but come from Indian or European manufacturers. Most patients agree, some can't switch. The medications they need don't have alternatives, or the alternatives require new prescriptions, new insurance approvals, time that's running out. Hour 108. The automotive sector implements rolling shutdowns. A Ford plant in Kentucky closes for scheduled maintenance. A GM facility in Texas moves to a 4-day workweek. The press releases don't mention supply shortages. They talk about market adjustments and inventory optimization. But the workers know. The assembly line supervisors have seen the component stock levels. They've done the math. A plant that produces 1,200 vehicles per day needs 47,000 individual parts to flow in perfect synchronization. If 5 of those parts are missing, the entire line stops. It doesn't matter if the missing parts are small, a sensor housing, a rubber gasket. The line is binary. It runs or it doesn't. By hour 120, 5 days in, the consumer electronics market effectively freezes. Online retailers show products as available, but shipping dates slide from 2 days to 4 weeks to currently unavailable. A PlayStation 5 that was in stock Monday morning is gone by Tuesday night and won't return. The same pattern repeats across categories: laptops, tablets, smartwatches, wireless headphones. The products aren't technically discontinued, they're just unavailable for an indefinite period. Resale markets explode. A used iPhone in good condition, normally priced at $450, sells for $680. A gaming laptop 2 years old moves for 90% of its original retail price. People aren't buying electronics anymore, they're acquiring assets. Hour 132. The rare earth metal shortage starts impacting defense production. The Pentagon sends a classified memo to key contractors outlining immediate concerns. Neodymium is critical for missile guidance systems. Dysprosium is essential for military-grade motors. Current stockpiles exist, but they're measured in months, not years. A defense contractor in Colorado receives guidance to prioritize existing projects over new bids. The message is clear: conserve what we have. The consumer economy might absorb shortages by switching products or delaying purchases, but defense systems can't substitute. An F-35 needs specific components built to exact specifications. There are no alternatives. There is no commercial equivalent. Hour 144, 6 days. The industrial supply chain, the invisible network that feeds manufacturers, construction firms, and repair operations, starts fragmenting. A construction company in Nevada orders replacement drill bits, hydraulic fluid, and safety equipment. The order arrives 40% complete. The missing items aren't critical. The project can continue, but the margins are gone. Every missing tool, every delayed part extends timelines and increases costs. A project manager recalculates the budget and realizes that the 8% profit margin they were expecting is now 2%. And that's only if nothing else goes wrong. Across thousands of projects, the same math is happening. Profitability is evaporating. By hour 156, the healthcare system moves from rationing to allocation. Hospitals create priority lists for medications in short supply. ICU patients are Tier 1, emergency surgeries are Tier 2, elective procedures are Tier 3, outpatient prescriptions are Tier 4. A doctor in a Chicago hospital explains the logic to a patient who needs a refill on their maintenance medication. We have to prioritize the patients who will experience immediate harm without treatment. I know this is frustrating, and we're working to find alternatives, but right now we need you to stretch your current supply as long as possible. The patient has 9 pills left. The doctor suggests splitting them in half, taking a reduced dose to extend the supply. This is not standard medical practice. This is crisis management. Hour 168, 1 week. The economic data starts catching up to the physical reality. Unemployment claims tick up 1.4% as manufacturers implement furloughs. Retail sales drop 6.3% as consumers delay purchases, uncertain about product availability and future income. The stock market is down 18% from its pre-crisis peak, oscillating wildly on rumors and policy announcements. The Federal Reserve cuts interest rates by 0.5 point, trying to stimulate borrowing and investment. But the move feels disconnected from the actual problem. You can't lower interest rates into existence a factory that doesn't exist, or a chemical compound that isn't available. Some economists begin using a new phrase in interviews: supply-side deflation. The economy is slowing not because of lack of demand, but because supply has been severed. Hour 180. The recycling and repair economy suddenly becomes critical infrastructure. A laptop repair shop in Portland that normally fixes broken screens and replaces batteries is now disassembling old devices for parts. A circuit board from a 2019 model can fix a 2022 model if you know what you're doing. The owner describes the shift. People used to ask if it was worth repairing or if they should just buy new. Now they don't ask. They need it fixed because there's nothing new to buy. The throwaway culture of the past 2 decades reverses in days. Planned obsolescence meets forced longevity. By hour 192, 8 days in, the energy sector identifies a critical vulnerability. Solar panel production in the U.S. requires inverters, and 71% of inverters are manufactured in China. Current inventory supports about 30 days of installations. After that, the renewable energy build-out, the infrastructure projects designed to transition the grid towards sustainability, they stop. Not because of policy or funding, because the components don't exist. A solar farm project in Arizona, scheduled to break ground next month, receives a call from their equipment supplier. We need to pause your order until we can confirm component availability. The project manager asks for a timeline. The supplier can't give one. Hour 204. The public messaging from government officials remains calibrated and calm. Press briefings emphasize diplomatic channels, ongoing negotiations, and the resilience of the American economy. A White House spokesperson fields questions about shortages and says, "We are working closely with allies and domestic manufacturers to ensure continuity of essential goods and services." The phrase essential goods is doing heavy work. What counts as essential? Medicine, obviously. Food, certainly. But what about the plastic components in insulin pumps, the lithium batteries in medical devices, the rare earth magnets in MRI machines? The essentiality isn't binary, it's a web, and every thread connects back to the same source. Hour 216, 9 days. The behavioral economics becomes self-reinforcing. A news report mentions potential shortages of winter clothing, citing supply chain disruptions. The report is factual, not alarmist, but the effect is immediate. Retailers see a 340% spike in coat and boot purchases over the next 18 hours. Inventory that was supposed to last through November is gone by mid-October. The shortages that were potential become actual, not because supply collapsed, but because demand surged in anticipation. Fear of scarcity creates scarcity. The feedback loop is elegant and destructive. By hour 228, the education sector confronts its dependency. School districts across the country discover that the tablets and Chromebooks they distribute to students, the devices that replaced textbooks and became essential infrastructure for remote learning, they're not being restocked. A school administrator in Texas calculates that if current devices fail at the normal rate of 6% per quarter, they'll lose 1,800 devices over the next year with no replacements available. The district debates whether to return to paper textbooks, but the printing industry has its own supply problems. The paper is domestic, but the ink formulations use pigments sourced from China. Every solution leads back to the same wall. Hour 240. 10 days in, and the simulation reaches the point where the initial shock transforms into structural adaptation. The economy hasn't collapsed, but it has entered a new state. Consumers have shifted from buying what they want to preserving what they have. Manufacturers have moved from growth mode to survival mode. The medical system is allocating rather than distributing. And beneath all of it, a question is forming that no one wants to ask out loud. How long can a modern economy function? When 18% of its physical goods stop flowing? The historical models suggest different answers depending on which variables you weight. Some say months. Others say the damage is already irreversible, not because of the shortages themselves, but because of the adaptations they force. When a hospital learns to ration medicine, when a manufacturer learns to operate with half its normal inputs, when consumers learn to repair instead of replace, those behaviors don't automatically reverse when supply returns. The economy that emerges from this isn't the economy that entered it. The ports are still quiet. The warehouses are emptying at different rates, some fast, some slow, all in one direction. The pharmaceutical distributors are having conversations about which regions get priority when the next shipment arrives, if the next shipment arrives. And somewhere in a research lab, an engineer is looking at a component they need to complete a prototype, a small piece of machined metal that costs $11 and comes from a factory in Suzhou. And they're realizing that the project, 18 months of work and $4 million in funding, is paused indefinitely because of an $11 part. The complexity of the global system was invisible until it wasn't. Every product was a node in a network, and the network just lost its largest hub. This simulation doesn't end with a resolution because the scenario doesn't resolve in 10 days. It unfolds over months, each day introducing new shortages, new adaptations, new decisions about what gets prioritized and what gets abandoned. The stock market will find a floor eventually. Diplomatic negotiations will produce something, maybe partial restoration, maybe alternative arrangements. Domestic manufacturing will scale up in some sectors, but that takes years, not weeks. And through all of it, the economy continues, altered, constrained, but functional in a different shape. If a moment like this ever reached where you live, where nothing dramatic happens all at once, but everything slowly becomes unavailable, what would it mean for the decisions you make today?